This suppressed intellectual growth and restricted the development of skilled labor forces. European industries advanced rapidly, but colonies remained dependent on imported technology and expertise. Currency and banking reforms were also designed to benefit Europe. Colonies adopted European-style currency systems, which replaced local trade networks and forced economies to integrate into global financial markets. Colonial banks primarily served European businesses, offering loans and investment opportunities to settlers, not local people. Indigenous populations rarely had access to capital, making it difficult for them to build businesses or accumulate wealth. European colonial economies also introduced new legal systems that reshaped property rights. In many colonies, communal land ownership was replaced with private property laws, which allowed Europeans to take over large areas of land legally. Africans, Asians, and indigenous peoples, who traditionally used land collectively, were suddenly declared squatters on their own land because they lacked Western-style ownership papers. This legalized economic dispossession empowered colonial settlers and weakened local communities. A major long-term impact of colonial policies was economic dependency. Colonies were never allowed to develop diversified economies. Their industries produced raw materials but lacked manufacturing. Their markets were captive consumers of European goods. Even after independence, many countries remained stuck in the same pattern, exporting cheap commodities and importing expensive products. Global trade systems established during colonial rule still favored developed countries, leaving former colonies struggling to compete. Colonial borders further intensified economic challenges. Europeans drew borders without considering ethnic, cultural, or economic realities. This forced different groups into single states, creating internal conflict and political instability, which undermined economic growth. Resource-rich regions were merged with resource-poor ones, creating imbalanced economies. Post-independence governments inherited states that were never designed to function independently, but to serve colonial extraction. European colonial economies also contributed to environmental degradation. Intensive mining, deforestation, plantation agriculture, and wildlife exploitation severely damaged ecosystems. Colonizers focused on short-term profit with little regard for sustainability. Soil erosion, water depletion, and biodiversity loss were common outcomes. Many countries today face ecological crises, partly rooted in colonial exploitation of natural resources. However, it's important to acknowledge that colonialism also stimulated global economic integration. It created global shipping networks, international trade flows, and technological exchange. But these benefits were unevenly distributed. Europe gained prosperity while colonies paid the price. The modern global economy, including multinational corporations, international banks, and global trade institutions, developed from the foundations laid during the colonial period. Many of the world's wealthiest nations accumulated significant capital from centuries of colonial extraction. After World War II, European empires weakened and independence movements grew stronger. But even as colonies gained political independence, many remained bound by economic dependency. International loans, structural adjustment programs, unequal trade agreements, and foreign corporate influence created new forms of economic control, sometimes called neocolonialism. Former colonies continued exporting raw materials and importing expensive manufactured goods, continuing the same pattern established centuries earlier. Understanding European colonial economic policies is crucial because their effects still shape the modern world. Global inequality did not emerge by accident. It was engineered through centuries of extraction and structural manipulation. The wealth of many European countries is tied to resources taken from colonies. Meanwhile, the poverty of many nations is connected to systems that prevented them from developing strong industries, education systems, and infrastructure. Today, many countries are working to break the legacy of colonial economics by diversifying their industries, strengthening governance, investing in education, and promoting sustainable development. Regional trade agreements, South-South cooperation, and movements for debt relief are part of this effort. But progress is uneven and challenges remain. Building economic independence requires confronting historical injustices, understanding structural disadvantages, and creating policies that prioritize local development over global exploitation. European colonial economic policies reshaped the world economy. It created global networks, but also global inequalities. It brought technological progress at the cost of cultural and economic destruction. The legacy of colonial economic policies continues to influence how nations trade, how wealth is distributed, and how global power operates. To build a fairer future, understanding this history is essential. It is not just a story of the past, it is a system whose roots still run deep in the present. Only by acknowledging and addressing these economic structures can nations truly move toward equitable development and shared prosperity.